Welcome to the United Christian Marriage Podcast, where we help you build a healthy, united marriage that impacts everyone around you now and for generations to come. Today, we're talking about something that a lot of couples struggle with, but don't always know how to fix: emotional outbursts and how they affect your marriage.
Let's be real. Everybody has emotions. God designed us that way. But when those emotions turn into outbursts, they can cause damage, especially in marriage. If you ever felt like your emotions take control, or if you've been on the receiving end of your spouse's frustration, then this episode's for you.
Hey spouses, I know what it's like to be frazzled, overwhelmed, and stressed while managing all the tasks, balancing work schedules, raising children, and trying to grow closer to each other and the Lord. All the trauma and the shame cycles you can't seem to break out of are just the cherry on top, right? You know that you want to make a change, that you need something to be different, and you crave a happier, healthier lifestyle, but you don't know where to start, how to get there, and you just feel stuck. That's why I'm here, showing up every week with these podcast episodes, to give you the knowledge and momentum you need to get unstuck and begin healing the generational trauma in your family. Let's take off those trauma patterns and the lies of the enemy and put on the armor and strength of the Lord. We are building a better future for the next generation and every generation to come. And the healing for the next generations begins with us. So wives, grab your husband, and husbands, grab your wife a snack, and let's dive in and do the work.
Have you ever had one of those moments where you just snap? Maybe your spouse said something small, probably not even worth noting at this point, but it hits you the wrong way in the moment. And before you even realize what's happening, the words are flying out of your mouth, your chest is tight, and suddenly you're in an argument you don't even want to be in. Or maybe it looks different for you. Maybe you shut down instead. You feel the emotions bubbling up, but instead of speaking, you withdraw. You go quiet, avoid eye contact, and build that invisible wall, hoping the feeling will just go away. And later, when the dust settles, you wonder, why did I react like that? Why can't I just handle my emotions like a grown-up? Here's the thing. If you've ever felt out of control with your emotions, you are not alone. Most of us were never taught how to process emotions in a healthy way. But what if I told you that emotional outbursts, shutdowns, and those moments of regret don't have to be your normal? Imagine this instead. The next time you feel that surge of frustration, anger, or disappointment rising up, you don't react, you respond. You have a simple process to follow, a way to navigate your emotions instead of getting swept away by them. You move through them with clarity without letting them control you.
We've been there. We've learned that emotional outbursts don't just disappear with time. You got to have a way to go about it with a biblical and practical way to handle your emotions before they end up controlling you and hurting you in the long run. That's why today we're going to share a simple framework called P.A.T.H, and it's a method to help you process emotions in a way that strengthens your marriage instead of straining it.
Yes, that's so good, and I'm so excited to dive into this P.A.T.H method with you guys. But before we do that, honey, I just think that we should probably talk about our own experience with struggling to handle our emotions. So I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'll let you throw me under the bus here a little bit. Is there a time that you can think of where maybe I was being overly emotional and it caused pain to you or like brought disconnection on that day? I know there's probably a lot of them, but like, is there a specific one that stands out in your mind where you're like, yeah, that's a good example of when we needed to use this and didn't?
Well, it kind of goes along with it, but kind of doesn't. But anyways, this morning, funny enough, I was mowing the grass, and we had to take the kids to their music class before, I was saying before, at a certain time. Well, I was mowing the grass right up to when we had to leave. I woke up early And then as soon as the sun came up, I went out there and started cutting the grass. I've been waiting 2 weeks to cut the grass, and it was the only time I had because it was supposed to storm in the afternoon, so I knew I had to get to it. Well, problems happened. The mower started acting up. I had to do a small repair, and we ran out of wipes for the kids. So yesterday I was supposed to go to the store and get it, but then that didn't work out, so we just decided we were going to do it this morning. Well, I was supposed to do it first thing in the morning, but I started cutting the grass before the store even opened, so I figured I had time. Well, then, complications with the mower. So I had to last minute go and get wipes. Well, I didn't realize what time it was, so Chloe came out, and, well, they call you Micaiah, right?
Micaiah, yeah.
I feel like we had the same thing the last episode I was on.
It's okay. He calls me Chloe, you guys. It's my middle name. So if you hear him say Chloe, that's why.
Yeah, so Chloe came out, and she was, frustrated because I didn't realize what time it was. And at this point, it was like 10 minutes before we had to leave. And I had maybe like 5 by 5 feet of grass I had to finish cutting. Well, I didn't want to put the mower up and then maybe be able to finish it off in the afternoon before the storm came. So I just ended up cutting it, and then I went to the store, got the wipes, came back, and Chloe wasn't so happy because she had to get the kids ready by herself, and that was annoying. I get that. Well, the point I'm getting to is when we were just getting ready to leave, we also have a tire in the car, and one of the tires in the car is slowly leaking air. So we don't have time yet to go to the auto shop and get a new tire or me patch it up because I don't know how bad it is yet. Because it takes like 2 weeks and the tire and then the air goes out of the tire.
And we just found this out like yesterday, so.
Yeah, we have a little air compressor that you can plug into your car and it fills up your tire's air. Well, that was in the truck. And so I was grabbing out of the truck, and then Chloe was hollering at me to leave that we don't have time for it. And I was like, well, it doesn't matter if we don't have time or not. If I don't grab this right now, because it was like all tangled up in some ratchet straps, and I had to pull it out. It's like, if we don't have time for this right now, and we end up breaking down because the tire is out of air, then we're screwed. So we got to make time for me to go hurry up and grab this. And she was frustrated because we had to hurry up and go, and she had to take care of the kids by herself, and I was mowing the grass and etc. And then we ended up apologizing while we were on the way to the music class because we both did something wrong in that point. She wasn't being logical on or being aware of what we needed for the road or our situation as much. In the same way I wasn't, and she was taking her frustration out on me without thinking clearly, and I was being considerate at the time and was caring more about what I was doing versus what needed to be done for the whole family overall, in which that was be on time in music class, which, by the way, we were on time. We were actually 4 minutes early, which is not on time in my standard, but for being accused of being late.
Technicality. He's so funny because if I say that to him, he'll be like, that's not on time. But when it's his situation, then it's on time. But it's okay. I forgive you, babe. But it's funny because I didn't actually know that's what you were doing this morning. Like, I didn't realize until I saw the air compressor in your hand that that's what you were doing. All I saw was that the trunk was open and you had the side of the truck open and there was tool stuff. And I thought that you were moving your tool stuff out of the car back into the truck. And I was like, that's so unnecessary. Why are you doing that? But then when I saw you with the air compressor, then I realized like what was going on. And I definitely needed to do an emotional reboot this morning, but I was like feeling so rushed that in my head, I didn't even physically need to slow down because I believe you can do this path framework while you're just moving and busy. Like, you can just do it in your head really fast. But I was mentally busy too. So, like, I didn't let myself mentally slow down and do it. And if I would have, then I probably would have been calm enough to realize what was going on before I emotionally responded to you. And that probably would have helped. And I remember you were pretty crabby back, so we could have avoided that whole situation.
Yeah, I mean, we were just like, yeah, if you think about it, like, we're both adults, we both are responsible, we do care about time, and unlike, like, this morning was the one morning or one time where I wasn't paying attention to the time. Like, I sleep, I shower, I work with a watch on.
Yeah.
I rarely take it off. I'm always paying attention to the time. And this morning I was just so focused on cutting the grass because I've been waiting 2 weeks to do it. The first grass cutting of the year. And I love cutting my grass. Anyways, if we had been reasonable and had patience of like the mindset of, well, we both know what needs to happen. We both have different tasks to do. We both are trying to get to the same outcome, but like, she was worrying about getting the kids in the car and then getting to the class on time. But I was worrying about are we going to be able to have the ability to fill up the tire if we need to, or pretty much that was actually the only thing I was really worrying about at that point. But
I guess, like, me and Levi both have things that we fixate on at different times. Like, for me, sometimes I fixate on my computer work and it's hard for me to pull my head out of it. And then, like, I've worked on that a lot and gotten so much better. And sometimes Levi fixates on, like, projects. Like, if a project is getting done or needs to be done and it feels like very urgent to him, then it's hard for him to, like, pull away from it or think of other solutions. Like, but for me in that moment, I was like, well, it might not even rain later. Like, half the time it lies to us and says it's going to rain and then it doesn't, which is kind of what it did anyway. Funny enough. And I was like, well, if we really needed to, we could cram it in tomorrow. Like, so in my head, I was like, we could have put off the last bit of mowing to save the time, like, all that stuff was running through my head. And we both have things that we do that on where, like, we just disagree on, like, what was the best use of time. But anyways, that could be a whole nother conversation. But so the point of that was to just give you an example of, like, when we failed to do this, essentially. So you can see, like, a real life example of what it means to need to use this framework and to need to do an emotional reboot before you respond to your spouse. And in that morning, like, we responded quickly to it. Like, we apologized quickly. And I think that that's a huge measure of success in marriage, is your ability to genuinely apologize quickly. But I would say that, that definitely did have an effect on us in the sense that, it stole joy from our morning, and that's not ideal. But we want to teach you the PATH method that we have actually pulled straight from the curriculum and turned into this acronym. So essentially, I took one of the pages out and I was like, this page is so good. It's one of my favorite parts of the coaching program. And so I had it reworked into a little acronym. Me and ChatGPT played with it and tried to come up with something catchy. And we came up with the PATH framework. So I'm really excited to dive into this. And yeah. So before we do dive in, I want to say that we have this tendency to resist, distract, or react instead of processing our emotions. And before we dive in, like, just, this is really kind of like the base of the whole PATH framework, is that science shows that naming emotions reduces the amygdala's response by 50%. And so there's this myth that big emotions can last forever or feel like they last forever, but in truth, they can only physiologically peak for about 90 to 120 seconds. So that's a 2-minute maximum there. And just knowing that, I think, is very freeing if you're someone who struggles with that. If your parents didn't handle emotion well in your childhood, then you likely didn't learn the tools that you needed to process emotions in a healthy way. And additionally, to add to that, if you were ever told it's okay immediately, or if you were told to suck it up, or if you were told to stop crying, or I'll give you something to cry about, etc., then you likely learn to suppress or avoid your emotions. And this can lead to a huge strain on your marriage by destroying intimacy and safety, right? Like if you can't control your emotion and you're having these outbursts, you're hurting the emotional safety in your marriage and you're killing intimacy. And so obviously that's not ideal. And we're working towards the opposite of that. So, and the other thing I always like to note is that it doesn't always just affect our marriage, right? Like there's this trickling effect into other areas of our life. And so it's going to affect our kids. Like they're probably watching this, they're learning from this. And we do not want to pass on the cycle of being emotionally reactive or emotionally avoidant to our children, right? We need to do the work on our part to end those unhealthy patterns so that we can show up well in our marriage, well in our parenting, and well in every other area of our life. All right, let's dive into what the P.A.T.H method stands for. So this is an acronym, so like each letter stands for something. If you want to take notes, I would highly recommend that. And we're just going to dive in. Okay, so the overview is that P stands for pause and name it. So like what's happening inside of you, just call it what it is. What's the emotion? You can name it out loud in your head or write it down. Or if you're doing this with your spouse, like say it to them. A stands for acknowledge and accept it. So know that nothing has gone wrong. This is part of being human. T is to tune into it. How does it feel in your body? Describe it like a scientist. H is to help it move through. Breathe, release, and remind yourself that this feeling has no power to hurt you. Okay, so let's dive in a little deeper and kind of walk through an example. So P, pause and name it. Proverbs 29:11 says, "Fools give full vent to their rage, but the wise bring calm in the end." So from that, you can kind of decipher that wisdom is pausing before reacting. And so we can stop and name what's happening inside of us. So are you feeling anger? Are you feeling hurt? Are you feeling overwhelm or frustration? And an example would be, instead of thinking, I'm just mad, say, I feel unappreciated because I expected help and I didn't get it. And in that case, the emotion would be unappreciated. The specific you can get, the better. So in naming it helps you separate the emotion from your identity. So you don't want to say like, I am mad, as if you are mad, as if that's like a part of your personality, but rewording it in a different way so that it's more separated from you, because we are not our emotions. Our emotions are just chemical reactions. Okay, and then instead of reacting immediately, take a breath, step away if needed, pray before speaking, even a short, Lord, help me respond wisely, or a Holy Spirit come, can change the whole direction of how the conversation is about to go. Okay, so that's just the P, and that alone can have so much effect on the way that you go about handling the rest of that situation with your spouse or your kids or your boss or whoever it is. Do you want to explain A, babe?
Yeah, I'll give it a shot. Why not? So a lot of people think emotions are a problem to fix, but they're actually just part of being human. Even Jesus experienced strong emotions, being anger in the temple and sorrow and Gethsemane. I think I said that right.
I can never say that either, but that's talking about in the garden before he
Yeah, I know what it's talking about, but
Well, not for you, for the listeners.
Oh, okay. Yeah. But yeah. As you guys will learn as you listen, and while I'm on here, I have a hard time with words, so just bear with me, and hopefully you can understand what I'm trying to attempt to say. But anyways,
You're doing good.
So nothing has gone wrong just because you're feeling something intense. Instead of resisting it, accept it as if it's normal and part of your experience. So for example, instead of thinking, I shouldn't feel this way, say, this is a tough time and that's okay. Because it is. Or instead of snapping at your spouse for not helping, it might actually be about feeling unappreciated or undesired, or you can just fill in the blank. But ask yourself, what am I actually feeling and what's at the root of this emotion? Which, coming from me, sounds kind of cheesy just because men don't like feeling emotions. But if you give it time and you learn how to use the tools, what fits for you, I'm really just talking to men, if there is men out there listening, then if you give it a try, it might help. Well, it will help. It's just a matter of, are you willing to let it help or accept it in that type of form? If that makes any sense.
Yeah, so like just a backstory for everyone listening. So Levi went through the curriculum. He was like my first quote unquote client. And so he's gone through the entire coaching curriculum, and he had a hard time with this part. Like, is that fair to say, babe?
Oh, yeah.
Like, he didn't really understand how this would fit into his very manly, blue-collar, work life. Like, hopefully I explained that right. But, like, he is a man's man. Like, work with his hands. You know, he values hard work. He likes his like very masculine appearance and his very masculine mindset. And it's one of the things that I, admire about him. I like that he is manly and that he leads our home and that he takes care of business. I like that about him. But I think when he looked at this, he felt like it didn't fit into that, like into how he sees himself, right? Like his personality and this man's man, like he felt like this tool was maybe not manly. Is that safe to say, honey?
Yeah, and like in a way, it felt like it was like this new like world that we live in, like society. Like it was like maybe this is why we got a bunch of wimps in the world, but and I'm sure maybe in a way it does because everybody wants their feelings to be heard and seen and accepted and etc. And they decide they want to be a cat today. But in ways, it does help. And I think, how can I say this?
Because if you process it, then you don't need everyone to hear your feelings. Because you're not, like, if you're resisting your emotion or you're like, if you're not really letting yourself feel it and like process it and move on, because like processing it means you feel it, you let it live out its 2 minutes, and then you move on. Right, so that builds emotional resilience. But like, if you're like being a baby about it, I wouldn't say that's you processing your emotion. That's you, like being in a victim mentality.
Okay. I don't think men should share their feelings with anybody that will listen. The world doesn't evolve around our feelings. It's a tough world out there. And if you're a provider, if you work in the blue collar, I could probably imagine white collar, but I wouldn't know because I'm a blue collar. In that world, it's a hard world and your feelings are accepted. And, growing up being taught by a father, you weren't supposed to feel your feelings or in a way. But,
not saying that we agree with that, because we're not raising our son that way.
But this is why I've been willing to give it a shot, was because I don't think men are not supposed to feel feelings or just push everything deep down into this dark corner in ourselves, because then eventually you'll snap, you can hurt people, people will be affected, or you would just live a miserable life, or all the above. But I do think it is healthy to have tools, just like we have tools to take engines apart and build these towers, or how all the great things that humans do to make society functional with stuff, with tools. It's also nice to have mental tools, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But
marriage toolkit.
yeah, there you go. But like, back to the, I don't think men should just share their feelings, whoever, or just, I think if you have one person or a group of people that you can rely on, like a men's group or like a men's Bible group, or your wife, or if you have like a best friend, it's okay to be intimate with somebody and vulnerable. It's okay to be vulnerable with somebody. As a man, just choose who you're going to be vulnerable with wisely, fully trust them, but because men have to release what's inside their mind. We have to vent. We do have feelings too. We get sad too. There's times where men gotta cry. It happens. But men are also supposed to be tough, and we gotta be able to be vulnerable with certain people. But anyways, the side road. This isn't a men's podcast, but
that was good. Yeah. Well, they get a lot of my perspective, so I love bringing you on, and also just giving like the husbands out there representation, so that they can feel seen and heard and get that spiritual nourishment too, and that wisdom. So thank you for sharing that. Sorry I interrupted you there. I was going to ask for clarification, but you actually answered my question anyways. I just wanted to make sure that people knew that, like, you're not saying you shouldn't talk to anyone about your feelings, but like, you're just saying be subjective about who you choose to talk to your feelings about. Like, it should be someone that is a safe person, and not just in the sense that like they're not going to gossip about you or talk bad about you behind your back, but also in the sense that like maybe they're a Christian, maybe they have wisdom to offer, maybe like this person is someone that I know is not going to judge me or condemn me or offer me crap advice that goes against what I believe. So I think there's that aspect to it too. I wanted to kind of tie what you said back to what we were talking about the garden, because you were saying how even Jesus experienced strong emotions. He felt like the anger at the temple, and he flipped tables, and there's this sorrow when he was in the garden. And I think that's so good to like look at that. I kind of broke that down in the last episode before this, the bonus episode, but even we see like some of this path framework, we see Jesus do that in the garden. He tells the disciples that I think the word he said was he was filled with sorrow. It was like sorrow or agony. I can't remember. And it probably varies
it depends on translations.
Yeah. But it was an intense emotion, and he named it, right? So like that's that's our P, right? Is that we want to pause and name it. And that's what Jesus did. And he didn't just name it to himself. He actually named it to his disciples. Like he shared it with someone. And
well, there you go. If you're a Christian and you're a man, and if I tune in, there's going to be times where I tune in for men and women, but also just if I have something that I think would be good for the men. But anyways, if we're Christians and if you're a man, your ideal, what's the word? Someone you look up to.
Oh, mentor?
Yeah, your ideal mentor or somebody you want to put your life around or shape it around is Jesus. And if you think it's going to be wimpy or not manly to feel emotions that are like sad or sorrowful, like we were talking about, then just look at Jesus. I mean, Jesus, he was a carpenter. I mean, if you're in construction, or if you've ever done it as a side thing or whatnot, then you know it's tough work. So he was a man's man. He was a carpenter, but he's also very tough because he went and died on the cross for us, which is a pretty dang tough thing. If you just go to any Baptist church, I'm not saying only go to Baptist, I'm just using this as a point. If you go to any Baptist church, because I grew up Baptist, on a Sunday morning on Easter, you will hear how hard it was on Jesus to go through that on that day to hang on the cross. So it's pretty tough. But you know what? Also, he was also sad. He had some very vulnerable moments. But that's a man that we're supposed to be looking up to. Man or woman to look up to. But anyways. Go ahead, honey.
Yeah, if you want to hear more about that, go back and listen to my bonus episode that I did before this, because I really broke it down. And yeah, Jesus gave us a very, very good example of how to handle hard emotions, hard situations, how to handle it when we don't want to do something but we have to, and how to handle it when we ask for God to remove us from a situation and he doesn't. So, okay. Let's jump into T. So T, just as a reminder, was tune into it. So now that you've acknowledged the emotion, now you need to pay attention to how it feels in your body. So God created us as whole beings, spirit, mind, and body, and our emotions show up physically too. And God did create us to feel that full spectrum of emotion, right? So we can know that, like, we can handle it. We can. He created us too. But okay, so what does that actually mean? Like, this is tuning into, does your chest feel tight? Is your stomach in knots? Are your shoulders tense? And so just describe it like a scientist, okay? It feels like pressure in my chest. So, like, that's an example of how you go about it. And the more you notice, the more you can respond instead of react. A lot of times things are just uncomfortable in our body, like it's that chemical reaction, and we interpret that to be more than it is sometimes. Okay, so H is to help it move through. The key here is that emotions are temporary and they pass if we don't let them control us. And the goal is to actually feel them and help them move through instead of getting stuck in them or resisting them, which essentially is like, it's like a deck of cards, right? Like, you have all these repeating things, like ace, queen, jack. Is there numbers on a deck of cards? Yeah, there's numbers.
Really, honey?
I'm sorry, it's been a while since I looked at a deck of cards. Okay, so there's all these repeating
That was
things.
funny. that was...
Stop judging me.
When you asked that, it took me a second because I had to process what you said and then actually like believe or not if that's what I heard.
Okay, stop. Okay, listen. So it is, though. It's like a deck of cards because you have all these repeating things, right? So if you let's just pretend shuffling's not a thing, because we won't get into the complexities of that. But, like, imagine you have a deck of cards and you're just picking the one off the front, right? This is the thought or emotion that comes up, is the front card. And you're like, I don't want to deal with this. So you just put it in the back of the deck. Okay, well, that ace is going to come back around. It's going to keep coming as you just shuffle through those cards. And so if you're just constantly shuffling your whole life, just moving front to back, front to back, front to back, just moving through, it doesn't really go away. Like, you're either going to let it go through in 2 minutes right now, or you're going to keep having this repeating effect for however long you let this go on. So, Some ways you can do this: breathe, take slow, deep breaths to calm your nervous system. You can feel your emotion perfectly still and process it without moving. Or you can release by moving your body, maybe doing a stretch, shake it off, or go for a walk. And you can remind yourself that this feeling has no power to hurt you and you don't have to act on it. So, for example, instead of reacting in anger, you might say, I need a minute to process before I respond, and then you can take yourself through this P.A.T.H method. Think about how emotions were handled in your home growing up. A lot of times things can stem from like what we saw as kids or what we were taught at a young age. And looking back can help us get awareness and then help us decide how to move forward. So, was anger loud and explosive? Was it silent and passive aggressive? Was there a pattern of walking on eggshells?
And so now look at your marriage, and are you continuing those patterns, or are you choosing a new way? The good news is with God's help, you can break unhealthy patterns or cycles, and in the long run have a more healthy life.
Yeah. Which is what we're all about here, is breaking those generational cycles of dysfunction and bringing awareness to the things that we just do on default that maybe are not honoring God or serving us very well. So this week I challenge you to practice the P.A.T.H method. Next time you feel an emotional reaction rising, pause. Acknowledge what's really going on, talk it out with clarity, and most importantly, hand it over to God.
If you need more support, we are here to help in coaching, or just, well, we say coaching, but there's coaching, and then there's just just talking and, lending an ear. We are available for both. We do work with couples to help break these toxic cycles and create marriages that reflect Christ, which reasons why we enjoy doing this, because we both came from rough childhoods and we didn't have healthy or good examples of a good marriage, but we had inspiration from the previous generations of what people like to say the greatest generation that won 2 world wars. Just saying. Anyways, that ended up inspiring us to take the more traditional roles in marriage, and of course God helped with that too. Well, God helped break that toxic, because I think there's traditional, and then there's Christ traditional, then there's traditional of how it used to be, and one's toxic, one's not, and we take aspects of both. Well, you take the good of both. Well, of course the Christ traditional of course is all good. Yeah. But there's things of the old traditional, like the worldly traditional, that is also good. But
because it was rooted in the Bible.
Yes. Yeah. But anyways, you can book a free coaching call, and we're allowed to talk to you and get to know you, and hopefully be part of your journey.
Yeah, we would love to. Okay, guys. Well, that's it today. I hope that this has blessed you. And remember, healthy marriages create healthy homes, and healthy homes change generations. We love you. We're rooting for your marriage.
And we're praying for y'all.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope you got so much value out of it. And if you loved this episode, could you do me a quick favor and click 5 stars and leave me a review? It would do wonders for spreading the podcast out to other people who need it, and it only takes a few seconds. If you have an additional few seconds, why don't you go ahead and screenshot the episode and share it to your stories so we can spread the message and get more families healed. Thank you, and until next time, I will be praying for you, and I hope you have a blessed day. Bye.